Hearty good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to all of you to the Manufacturing CIO Symposium 2021, curated by Kamikaze B2B Media. I am Kavya R. Chavali, and as I welcome you all, I'd also like to wish you all a happy Janmashtami. And I think there is a lot of enthusiasm around the entire celebrations with Janmashtami, which is why we'll also bring in that kind of enthusiasm and energy even to this event, wherein we'll bring together some amazing industry leaders to share their thoughts and perspectives around all that is to do with the manufacturing industry. Now, we do see that the COVID-19 pandemic and Industry 4.0 are driving manufacturing industry to modernize their technology, accelerating digital transformation efforts. Now, the next industrial revolution is here, focusing not just on advanced technologies, but also on the collaboration between humans and smart systems. Now is the time for manufacturers to be implementing smart, connected and robust digital capabilities to prepare for a more responsive and resilient future. So against this backdrop, the Manufacturing CIO's Symposium will discover the trends that will define the manufacturing industry in the years to come. So let's hear from the industry leaders as they discuss the current and future trends with regard to the Industry 4.0 and Industry 5.0, analyze the upcoming trends and provide examples from the innovations and transformations happening in their own organizations. So I do believe all our attendees, all those who have joined us in, I'm sure you've taken a very good look at the agenda. It's in fact structured to provide multidimensional content to address the current challenges, trigger a solution-oriented mindset, a mindset of experimentation, peer exchange, and personal commitment. While the experience is digital, it's very much human with a focus on peer-to-peer interactions, hands-on sessions, and curated discussion sessions. As we all know, the theme of this year's conference is tackling today's new manufacturing tech challenges. So once again, a warm welcome to all of you to the Manufacturing CIO's Symposium 2021. As I promise you all, a day filled with informative and interactive moments, leadership and power panels. With that promise, let me in fact begin with the opening panel discussion. The theme is to do with the CIO and the connected enterprise, connecting people, processes, and technology. I'll just take probably a couple of minutes to also very quickly inform you all who our speakers are. Let me introduce them. In fact, moderating this session for all of us, we have with us Mr. Anil Sharma, CTO and lead AMENA with PepsiCo. In fact, he's someone who's a very dynamic IT leader with high energy, versatility, and with more than 29 years of leadership experience across automobile, tire, telecom, and foods and beverages industries. So Mr. Anil will be spearheading this panel discussion. Joining him, we have with us our speakers, Mr. Vinit Thakur, President and Chief Digital Officer, Lafarge, Holcim, India, ACC, and Ambuja Cements. In fact, he's a digital strategist with over 2.5 decades of technology leadership experience with large global and Indian conglomerates. We're also joined by Mr. Dhaval Pandya, Corporate CIO, Piramal Enterprises Limited, and he's someone who comes from a consulting background, and his vision is to deploy technology that can provide a sustainable competitive advantage in the long run and also enable business of the future. We also have with us Mr. Amit Sethi, Vice President Regional CIO, MENAT and India, Global Digital Customer Experience Leader, a Baker Hughes company. In fact, currently he plays the role of Regional IT Leader in the Middle East, North Africa, Turkey, and India for Baker Hughes. And he's also someone who heads the Global Digital Customer Experience team for his employer, in addition to his IT leadership responsibilities. Let's also move forward to introduce our next set of speakers. We have with us Mr. Akilur Rahman, CTO, Hitachi ABB Power Grids India. And in fact, he's someone who comes with a strong experience in leading global strategic initiatives, including startups, established and scale-ups in global multi-stakeholder and cross-functional environment. Well, that leaves me with our final speaker for the very first panel discussion. We also have with us Mr. Sujoy, Head IT South Asia with Linde India Limited. He comes with more than 2 decades of experience as the head of information technology for global manufacturing organization, wherein he leads the business to reach the goals that he's designed. So with that, it looks like a power-packed panel already to give a start to the program. On that note, we'll also be taking questions for our panelists. So I'm going to request you all to please share them. And if time permits, our moderator will be able to address those questions, your questions as well. So without any further delay, it's time to get this session started. And may I please hand over the proceedings to Mr. Anil. First up, we are going to bring all our panelists on board, so stay tuned. We'll get the session started in just a couple of seconds.
Thank you, Kavya. Thanks for a great introduction of the program and the panelists. With that, I welcome all the panelists to this interactive session, which we are going to talk about the connected enterprise. To me, before we go into the panel discussion, I would like to give a brief background from connecting how I see the connected enterprise, from my perspective. So I see this definitely creating a transformation in terms of productivity and competitiveness, by covering or converging, the information technology and operational technology, to access and capitalize on operational, business, and transactional data to improve enterprise, plant, and supply chain performance. So this is how I see or how I define, the connected enterprise. It has a few building blocks, which includes things, with the devices which you want to push the data out, and then connectivity to enabling the infrastructure which will collect, the devices and collect the data, and then data, of course, which is very critical and important component, which is storage, streaming capabilities, to the direct data. And then on top of that, the whole analytics piece, which is nothing but, the data science process, which helps solving, the process and, business problems. And with that background, I would like to invite, Vinit Thakur, and I have a specific question, Vinit, to you. So what does, the connected enterprise means to you personally and from your, corporation or organization perspective?
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, we can.
And thanks all the panelists. So, been thinking about this word connected enterprise of late. And before I get into specifically, I want to put some thoughts on the table in terms of how do we think about connected enterprise. We observe that there is a fundamental shift which has happened over the years. And this shift is related to the human beings. And we feel that it's the human beings who have changed. So a current human being is not the way he used to be around 6 to 7 years back around it. I won't say a decade. It's not a decade-old story when there is a paradigm shift in the behavior of the human being. And he's far more impatient now. He's far more decisive now. He's far more empowered now. He takes he sits on his desk. He has a small device in his hand, and through his device, his entire life cycle gets managed or gets moved. So whether it is entertainment, which we talk about, he talks about which he wants to have, whether he wants to have knowledge acquisition, if he wants to go for a medical treatment, if he wants to socially engage with his grandfather or his father. I mean, everything is around that small device, which is a mobile device. And that's a powerful shift which has happened. And if that is the powerful shift which has happened, then he wears the hat of a customer, he wears the hat of an employee, he wears the hat of a vendor, he wears the hat of an investor. So in today's context, anything has to be thought around this fundamental shift in the human being. And this shift has happened primarily because there has been a massive explosion in technology capabilities. And these technology capabilities, plus a few new age service providers or a new age companies, they have created services and goods, which has created that shift into him. And if you think deeply, this shift is nothing but a shift of convenience. And human beings always seek convenience. So this is the core thought which I want to put on the table. So what an enterprise needs to do is to align itself with this new shift in the human being. And this shift at the one edge is customer. And I would like to take just two pivots here. One is customer as a pivot, and another pivot which I would like to take is employee. And these are the two hats I would like to put in. So a new age customer experience demand a new age employee experience so that the new age employee can deliver to a new age customer. And around these two pivots, we need to think about it. And that's where the connected enterprise comes. So if you need, if a customer has a completely dramatically new experience, which he's expecting, which he's getting used to because of the Oyos, Amazons, and Googles of the world, then so be it. Either the enterprises align themselves with with this new experience, or I wouldn't mind saying that there would be a risk of getting obsolete, and there would be getting a risk of wiped out also. To the extent, I wouldn't mind putting that thought on the table. And if you think of, if this is the new experience which is expecting on the e-space, then that new experience also demands a delivery experience. And if that's a delivery experience, entire supply chain integration comes into the play. And if it demands a delivery experience, supply chain and agile manufacturing needs to be in place. And agile manufacturing would demand all the components of manufacturing, whether it is OT layer on top of that, historians or data layer on top of that, operational analytics or advanced analytics, all the layers it comes in. And then again, it goes back to sourcing, and it goes back to sales and marketing. So that's a key thought. So to meet the new experience, the new age experience of a customer, the entire organization needs to be aligned. And this alignment is a need of survival. I'm not even saying that it is a need to thrive. It is merely a need for survival. And of course, all the components need to be aligned. So that's the way I would like to define, Anil, a connected enterprise in today's context.
What a awesome thought, Vinit. And I like two things, or two statements which you talked about. One is impatient, decisive, individual, managing life cycle through the mobile. Very strong statement. And the second is, which generally, when we talk about connected, we always focus on customer, but you also talked about, a employee, new age employee experience brings new age customer. So, unless your employee is thinking the way customer is thinking, it's very difficult to bring the new age technology. Awesome thoughts, very, very mindful thoughts. With that, let me move to my next panelist, Amit. And Amit, my question to you is, from your perspective, what are the different features you think a connected enterprise have? Whether you are following in your organization or in general, you think around that.
Yeah, no, sure. Thanks for that question, Mr. Anil, and good thoughts there, Mr. Vinit, to initiate the discussion, right? So when I look at a connected enterprise, and I operate in the energy industry, right? So we help our customers, typically large upstream or downstream oil and gas companies, or even customers in the industrial sectors, right? Operate their assets and offer them services, as well as sell them equipment, right? So my lens will be an energy industry focused lens of a supplier to the energy industry, and a set of allied industries like aviation and industrial, etc. Right? So few things that I have seen in this within the organization and beyond, right? Within the organization, there is traditionally been that if I focus on the factory worker, right? So there has been that need to offer productivity linked tools to the factory worker. We do have a unique challenge in some sectors, especially in the global scenario, where we are seeing that employees are retiring, and there's not a lot of good talent that's coming in markets that have a maturing workforce. So how do you enable the new age employee and give them the right set of tools to acquire the right set of skills there? That's where we do offer, from a connected enterprise perspective, remote experts helping our junior employees in field when they are at customer sites, right? We also are looking at features of the traditional features that were focused on inventory visibility across the supply chain, continue to be very powerful for us, especially with us when the resilience of the supply chain was tested during COVID, right? That gained an additional level of importance from a connected enterprise perspective. And I think Mr. Vinit talked about the employee and the customer. I would like to talk also about the machine or the asset, right? Monitoring the health of the assets, right? And not just a singular asset, but having a plant-wide view of your asset health and your plant condition monitoring, right? Becomes an important thing. Whether it's monitoring using sensors attached, we are also now deploying wireless sensors, our own products, into the market, where you could monitor the health of multiple assets and connect them wirelessly to a central panel and get a plant-wide view. So those are few lenses from which I look at the connected enterprise, both within and the organization, and then from the extended supply chain from a customer perspective. Thanks.
Yeah, great input, Amit. Thanks for that. And then two things which I again picked up, from your one. I like this remote expert concept, and I'm very sure different organizations adopted different way of remote expert. We also did something. If time permits, I will share my experience. So and specifically in COVID situation where the lockdown were happening, I'm sure this must have come very handy. And then second, you talked about offer productivity tools, to soft flow, if I'm right. And the third thing, which is linked to that, which generally is very important, is your assets. Ensuring your asset health are monitored. And then you also introduce wireless sensor, which is very important. An interesting area again. How to collect data and monitor it remotely. So awesome thoughts again. With this, let me bring one more panelist into the discussion, Mr. Sujoy Sen. And Sujoy, my question will be a bit direct. That what are the benefits your organization, if adopted, connected theory, what are the benefits you are bringing to the table in your organization by different initiatives?
Sure, Anil. I think it's a great question what you have raised. I think the discussion, the way it's going on, how Mr. Thakur and Amit have summarized it. So we clearly understand that the connected enterprise is the new thing, and that's what we have to all adopt to. Now, what is the need for doing that, and what are the benefits the organization who have adopted that are currently getting? Now, the first thing what I see coming up very strongly is the productivity part, right? So we all know, due to the different levels of pandemic, how it has impacted the business situations are quite volatile at this point of time, right? We are not sure that how the third wave is going to be, how long this is going to last, what is going to happen. So there is a sort of a pessimism, if that's the right word, if I might use, within the business community itself, right? So at this point of time, as a IT organization, if we are being able to bring in productivity into the table, I think that's something that's definitely a very delightful for the organization. And with the connected enterprise, I think that is what is possible, right? What Amit highlighted is that the remote monitoring of it, right? What we are now sort of going into, we are completely going into an automated plants, right? So we are going, the size of the plants are now varying, right? Instead of being a big plants for big organizations, there are a lot of smaller units which are now coming up. Now, these particular units are completely unmanned, kind of, right? So what we have to do is that 24/7, this particular operations is being monitored by a ROC center, a remote operating center. So that center is now entirely controlling this particular plant remotely. Right? So that is what is possible in today's world because we have a connected enterprise itself, right? So without that, I mean, nobody can even imagine about it. So that is a great improvement the technology is allowing us to move into, right? The another aspect is that we're all talking about the data part of it, right? So we use Historian and various other products to capture the tag informations and all. But this amount of data was mostly sitting idle for a very, very long span of time itself. So what we're currently trying to do is that creating a data lake of it and then trying to analyze that particular data and find out the different perspective. Right? This is also possible because we are now being able to create a platform where the so-called operational network or the OT network can actually talk to the business network. The merging of things is now being possible. And this is also happening because of the various technological innovations which are coming in, right? And when we talk about, I think Amit or Mr. Thakur has raised that how can we merge the manufacturing with the supply chain itself, right? So normally what we have seen is that the supply chain is normally part of the business network part of it, right? Whatever so the ERPs and anything solutions, what we run on that, right? So now when we are merging these two things together, it is possible that because of this OT and the business network talking to each other, the systems are now interacting with each other. So the opportunity for getting a new business opportunities coming out of that is becoming very, very interesting for us. I think that is what these are all becoming possible because of this connected enterprise setup what we have. I think that's what the key benefits, Anil, what I would like to summarize.
Thanks, Sujoy, and excellent inputs, and experience sharing. I really like the idea of, we always talk from IT perspective, the network operating center, but I'm hearing now, you are creating, the remote center which will manage your manufacturing. So automated plant, way to go. Definitely from process industry perspective, but discrete will be still, a challenge. Then you talked about data lake and associated analysis, which is a great idea, and getting traction. IT OT network merging into one is a great idea, but it brings its own challenge also. And with that, I would like to invite my friend Dhaval Pandya, to talk about, what are the different challenges of becoming a connected enterprise. If he can put some light on that from his own experience in his organization or in general. So Dhaval, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Anil. A very good afternoon to you and very good afternoon to all my fellow panelists. Very interesting and very pertinent thoughts by Mr. Thakur, Mr. Amit and Mr. Sujoy. And, a very good question as well. We've all been looking at the benefit side of things, but challenges, they come hand in hand. So to answer this, I'll just like to take a step and go back to the basics and say that, okay, what are some of the principles when you're looking at the connected enterprise or the industry 4.0? So the four main principles guiding it are interoperability, information transparency, technical assistance, and decentralization of decisions. These are the four pillars on which you would base your entire architecture of industry 4.0 or the connected enterprise when you want to go about it. Now, what happens is that while every threat brings in an opportunity, every opportunity also brings in a threat. So with each of the principles, you are exposing yourself to certain challenges. Now, what are some of the challenges? Interoperability, which is the principle in itself becomes a challenge. For example, you are talking about, making information which is available in the real world available to the machines, and let the machines do certain, brainy work, if you were to say, and try to take certain decisions on behalf of the human that was earlier doing it. So interoperability in itself, because the entire data sensitivity part, the data privacy part comes into picture as to how the data, is being managed. Say data, you talk about data at rest or data in motion, how this data is being made available, what are the GDPR laws that are governing the particular industry that you're talking about, and how all of these aspects and the entire data architecture is getting managed. So that, I think, is one of the biggest challenges that every organization is trying to grapple with. And somewhere where we make a mistake is that this becomes more of an afterthought rather than becoming a design principle. So then it becomes a little more difficult to tackle this problem, because by then it would have become, a 10x problem from where it was. The second part is which you spoke about is the gap in technical skills, and I think even Mr. Amit and Mr. Vinit brought this to the fore. That earlier it was a brainless machine that was operating, and the brains were supposed to be with the humans. Now with Industry 4.0 and interoperability coming to the fore, the machine is no longer a brainless machine, and the human has to now impart more and more intelligence to that machine. So you may have the best of infrastructures, you may invest in the best of technologies, and you may have the best of tools. But if you do not, but the driving force is always people, process, and technology. So if you focus only on the digital or the technology aspects, and you don't focus enough on the process, where the process is lean enough to adopt the digital technology, and the human being or the people part is, has the digital maturity more than the technical skills to be able to work in an environment which is core digital, as they call it. That becomes one of the biggest challenges, because you have to do a lot of BPR, or you have to invest in a lot of re-engineering efforts to be able to. It's not about just adding sensors to the machine. It is also about looking at your processes in a different lens. It is also about looking at the operability in a very different lens. The next part, which becomes a problem, is actually the security, which is one of the biggest threats, with more and more investments being made. And I think Mr. Sujoy would agree, when he's investing in remote operating centers, security would be one of the prime concerns or the prime pillars as to how he bases the entire architecture. Because think about this, there is largely there is no human intervention. It is owned by external. And if you're talking about machines which are taking decisions and operating basis the data real time available to them, then how, and if they make certain decisions, and there are machines which fall in a AAA category, which basically can cause injury to life or limb when not operated correctly. And if you're leaving decision making to such machines, and say, for example, if it were hacked, or if it was compromised, then it could really turn into a very, very big disaster. Not just from an enterprise perspective, but also from a personal perspective, because it could actually damage, cause injury to life or limb. So one is the injury part of it, and the other is it becomes a very prime target for malware and ransomware kind of attacks, because it could bring the complete operations to a grinding halt if not handled correctly. So how do you basically secure your architecture end to end, and not just think about that piece of network which is in isolation, but we are talking about a connected enterprise. So how does the IT and OT sync well, and then how do you add a security layer above it which takes care of it end to end? I think that's where a lot of technologies such as SASE, which are coming in picture today, which provide you these capabilities, where you have a single pane of glass, or the SIM kind of systems, or you talk about the XDR kind of systems, which can not just look at one part, but it can look at the entire and interpret information which is available across the board. And the last challenge, according to me, and I think this is going to be a challenge as long as we are with this technology, is how do you handle the growth of data? Because like Sujoy also mentioned, the data is now, it is going to be prolific. You with the amount of information that you're collecting, and how do you firstly ensure that the right amount of data is getting accumulated, the right amount of data is getting utilized, and the right amount of data is getting decommissioned as well. Because you pride in saying that you have petabytes of data, but when the petabytes keep multiplying, how do you predict that what the data growth is going to be, and how do you build for that at cost is becoming a challenge. So I think these are some of the 5 challenges which right now are something that we need to grapple with when we are looking at a connected enterprise.
Great, thanks, Dhaval. Talking about challenges, and I like the passion you bring to the table. While explaining the challenges, there are a few things which I picked up. Data-related challenge, and it's not only the data architecture, but it's the data size and how it has to be handled going forward. And the second piece, we are talking about technical skills. We're talking about bringing new technology, but we need to revisit the processes also. Maybe some of the processes which have lived their life, may not be able to sustain, when we talk about technology. And then third, which I picked up, is the security. It's not only physical information security, but physical security to do. So with that, Vinit, would you like to add any other challenge based on your experience in your organization perspective to what Dhaval talked about?
Yeah, Thanks, Dhaval. It was very powerful. So I appreciate that. And thanks all the panelists, very powerful points. We'll try to bring a different perspective and we'll attempt not to repeat. So, I believe in X number of years, maybe 2 to 3 decades, artificial intelligence will take over. I read Yuval Noah Harari, and he being historians, he's saying we will be worthless people in 30 to 40 years of time. We would have nothing to do as human beings, but still some distance. Till the time human beings are at the core, the fundamental problem is human beings resist change. They don't want to change. None of us like change. I wanted to ask my wife to shift from one house to another. There's so much of issue. No one wants even a simplest of the changes, And that's the core of the problem. And this problem is not there. We are technology guys. The problem continues. I have now more than 25, 30 years of experience. And this problem is not new. And this problem is not new, but this problem is a big problem, and there's an obvious problem. So that's the core. And unless otherwise, so that's one. I want to bring in another dimension here. The leap and bound at which technology has grown up. It's very, on one hand, if you really look at when you're a customer, you want convenience at the highest level. But when you're a decision maker, you don't want to burn your past. That's become very, very, very important that we as decision makers and the age group, primarily all the decision makers are into, they need to burn their past to really reap the advantages of the explosive technology growth which has happened. Otherwise, companies like Flipkarts and Amazons, they become multi-billion-dollar company in a few years of time. And that happens because they are able to exploit the capability of the technology. So I believe the core of all the problems is the change itself. And just to give you the feel of the type of changes which my organization is experiencing. So on manufacturing, my OT and IT layer is integrated. We are already able to predict product quality. Some of the quality parameters we are already able to predict. We are already having dynamic ways to manage high-level controls. On the manufacturing side, on front end, we are able to provide predictive routes to our sales team. On supply chain side, we are able to again do the route planning in a predictive manner. So this is all working now. It's all there here to stay. Now, it's not so easy when you expect your team out there who've been on legacy method of working for years together to adopt to it. So adoption is a key challenge here, So one of the huge challenges is how do you adopt? And adoption usually has been a lip service in most of the organization. There has to be methods of adoption. There has to be KPIs for adoption itself so that adoption gets deep rooted. And even before we start talking about the monetization of technology investment, we may have to go about thinking of up to what extent adoption is integrated and up to what layer those non-sexy KPIs are being monitored. Adoption KPIs I'm talking about, not monetization. Monetization KPIs are pretty sexy. Everyone likes to monitor at the highest level. What about how many people have logged into the system? Those are non-sexy KPIs. So how do you go about monitoring? So adoption becomes very important, key challenge. Again, a mass team would have to be reskilled. And again, Dhaval spoke about it, so it's a repetition. But that skilling and reskilling is pretty important. So at high level, I want to keep it short. There are other people who would be talking about it, but I want to keep it short. I want to just say that change itself is the biggest challenge. And if you really deep dive into change, then these are some of the dimensions of the change which I would have spoken to becomes pretty apparent. So that's what I would say. What are the key challenges on the
Great input, Vinit, again, and change management, resistance to change continue to be a problem. It was there earlier, it is continued to be here, and maybe it will continue to be in future also. And it's not a small problem, it's a big problem. You also talked about, which I like, leap and bound of technology growth, and then you need to learn the past and then move on, and learn the new rather. Third thing which I really like about adoption, and as you rightly said, people do lip service around that. But let's talk about, how we can bring some KPIs around adoption, and then, monitor adoption using KPIs like we do, anything else in the organization. So very great input and, the suggestions. Now with this, let me move to my next panelist, Akilur Rahman. Akil, question to you is, what are the tools, solutions you are using in your organization, to achieve the objective of connected enterprise? If you can talk about a few from different bucket, that will be really helpful.
Thank you, Anil. Very interesting discussion. So I would start with a few pointers, like you started with some questions. When we say connected means what? I think as enterprise, as OT, IT, we have been connected since long. But what we are talking today is about connected in real time. It's not about, getting connected every week or every month or every year. I mean, it started, if you go back a few decades, I think it was every maybe a year or every 6 months. Every month, people were connected, the process were connected, the KPIs were collected and then analyzed. But today we are talking about when connected means it is connected in real time and end to end. So we have, of course, in different process plants, different discrete manufacturing plants, different automation, robotics, sensors are there. But now we are talking about all the elements of enterprise, starting from OT production to the enterprise, with sensors, with actuators, with controllers, with people, with processes. They are all connected in real time. And then what we do is we collect the data. The automation itself runs, because it has been there for several decades. I think even digitalization is also there in many process plants, energy, since many decades. So here, in addition to the conventional automation process, we also collect the data through the sensors, or maybe put additional sensors to collect the data, make it available in the cloud, so that it's available to a larger set of experts who can analyze the data, get the data in real time, analyze, improve the performance. So that's exactly the goal. So we sort of define the performance parameters in terms of KPIs, whether it is productivity or energy efficiency or asset health, environment, cybersecurity, and also the quality of the products. So these are very clearly defined KPIs which we monitor, and monitor the indicators of those in real time. And then talking about what are the tools, of course, the tools are, conventionally we have been having a lot of automation systems with sensors, with actuators. As Hitachi ABB, we also make robots. And basically, I'll give example of our customers, what we do for our customers, because that's much more complex than what we do in our own manufacturing. So it's all about in real time, how do you have this data available in your automation system, and run some algorithms to optimize the process, whether it's a cement plant or oil and gas, or it's a energy production plant. Then what you do is you have this data available, then you can apply all these digital technologies in terms of data analytics. We have been seeing applying AI, ML, artificial intelligence, machine learning, applying also AR, VR kind of technology, blockchain, and also having the digital twin of the system, whether it's asset or system or operation, digital twin of that. By doing that, we are able to analyze the system in real-time data and come back with suggestions which can be improving the performance of the system. In addition to the automation, which is a layer, which is a sort of very strong layer, and on top of that, the digitalization sits. So here, the idea is that we have this technology. So I'll give an example, like we have developed a robot which goes inside a transformer. Transformer is a big one, you might have seen, like a 2-storied, 3-storied building. as well. So whenever there is a problem in the transformer, then you have to do the inspection. It takes almost 3 weeks of downtime of the transformer, because you have to take out the transformer from the circuit. You have to evacuate the oil because it has got the insulating oil inside, cooling oil inside. You have to evacuate the transformer from the oil. You have to take out the assembly and then do the inspection, what has gone wrong. So that takes 3 weeks time. But now we have a robot. We have developed a robot which is a diver robot. So we don't have to take out oil. We don't have to disassemble the transformer. The robot goes inside and it dives inside the oil, which is very highly chemical. It's an insulating oil. So it goes inside, very thick oil, but it has sophisticated camera sensors, which will provide the data about the inside of the transformer, which is available in real time to the site, the maintenance engineer, and also to our experts remotely. The experts is sitting maybe in Canada or US or Europe or in India itself, but then remotely they're there. So they are able to inspect it, and then they are able to find the fault, any incipient fault in the system, and then it happens in 2 days. So instead of 3 weeks of downtime, we are able to do it in 2 days, so that the transformer is back in operation if it is healthy in 2 days time, not to wait for 3 weeks, where it can handle maybe 200 megawatts of power, but that way. So this is one example of how this the sensor in real time, the robots, the automation is improving the performance of the system, making the asset available, reducing the downtime of the system. So I think this technology, and we also have this, the previous speakers talked about remote monitoring, remote expert assistance. This is also an example where, so remotely we are able to see the asset. We are able to see the experts sitting elsewhere in the globe. They are able to see and then assist the site engineer, site maintenance engineer, what to do next. So with this example, it's all about how do we converge all these technology to improve the KPIs and reducing surprises and risk. Today we are in a situation, it's like a VUCA world, so volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. So that we have seen in last 1.5 years how the production has gone down, reduced, and all lot of surprises in the system. So how do you do that? I think the AI, ML, artificial intelligence, machine learning is bringing the capability to predict the system operation, predict the asset health, and also have some prescriptive way to manage it. So that way we are using these technologies. Coming to, there are questions always. People say if we go more of automation and AI, ML, so what is that the human being they are going to do? I think the topic here is how do we connect people, process, and technology. It's important to know that it's not just the artificial intelligence, it's all about augmented intelligence. Human intelligence and artificial intelligence, they have to work together. The example I gave, the robot, which is diver robot, which is providing information. So there, it's not only the AI ML algorithm, but also the human experts sitting, so because they know they have huge amount of experience from past. And that way, I think we can also motivate people to go beyond their current sort of role in operation analytics. People always say, we say that, how we use our brain, average 10 to 15% of our brain we use. So we have to motivate people that having all this system, automation system, AI, ML system, digital system, people can actually go beyond that 10, 15% of usage of their brain. Analyze the system more and more, get the the next system in place which is more efficient, more predictable, reduces the risk. I think this is all about the tools are there. And finally, it is the final question. I'll take just a minute to address that how this OT-IT convergence will happen. So here there are two distinct differences. Many of you are from process plants, as you know. On the OT side, it has to be a availability-based system. So whereas on IT, we always look at the confidentiality. So we call it, AIC, availability, integrity, and confidentiality of data. So that is in the OT side. In the IT side, it's the other way around. It's about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So these are two different, kind of approaches. So we have to bring them together, still ensure that the system is running, because the OT system has to be fault tolerant. For example, if you have some controller, some algorithm not running, the system has to still run, because otherwise you have a lot of chemical processes which will get disrupted. It may lead to hazards. It may lead to human safety. Yeah. Whereas on IT side, we can still, live with a restart of the machine, right? Or the machine is hanging. That's fine. I mean, we allow that. I think these two paradigms we have to bring together and ensure that we design the entire system on a defense in depth kind of approach, doing the threat modeling from the cybersecurity point of view, ensuring that even if there are insider or outsider threat, the vulnerability, they are addressed and the system is automatically self-healing kind of system. So that way we can, retain the performance of the system and improve it further instead of having interruptions. So that's what I just wanted to say.
Awesome thoughts, Akilur, and looks like you have you named the tool, you have it in your system, you have it in your organization, and what is an amazing journey in terms of people talk about productivity. This robotic thing which you did, bringing the overall lead time from 3 weeks to I think 2 days.
2 days.
So not only reducing the time, but I'm assuming the overall cost must have drastically reduced.
Yeah.
And so this is the right example, to use technology, for organization, and not only reduce the lead time, but generate the productivity out of that. And then you talk about which is very important. People keep talking about AI, but you have taken it to the next step called augmented intelligence. So that gives a confidence, Akilur, that human is not going to be obsolete, irrespective whatever AI is going to do in 5 to 10 years or 10 to 30 years time frame. So with that, and then you touch base on some of the security things, and with that let me invite my friend Sujoy again, and then talk about Sujoy. If you can quickly talk about something, do you think there is an increase in cybersecurity threat, a risk, by becoming a connected enterprise, or in other words, by bringing OT and IT together, and exposing yourself, to the external world. So Sujoy, over to you.
Absolutely, Anil. I think cybersecurity overall, within the business network, it is very, very evident, and we are taking a lot of precautions around that. And as the OT now comes and talks to the IT network, this is also becoming very, very evident on that. What I think Dhaval was highlighting, that when we are setting up the ROC and when the systems are getting monitored remotely, kind of, right? And if a cyber security issue happens at that point of time, and if the tag data, imagine a situation like, so there is a hacker who gets into the network and being able to modify the tag data. So sitting in the remote operating center, it is extremely difficult to detect it and take precautions on top of it. So these are definitely, we are now looking into putting whatever the IT network standards we have maintained, IT security standards we have maintained, those are now coming and getting replicated into the OT network. It's easy to say, but it's a tall task, right? I can give you a very basic example. When we start operating and doing a security analysis of the entire OT network devices itself, we find Windows 8 system, right? And we say that this cannot be used. You guys need to replace it. And they said that, no, this is that OEM system. We have got a license contract with them. We cannot check, those kind of challenges, the basic day-to-day challenges comes in. And we have to live with those kind of security threats, if we may call it in that way, right? And protect it. Create a kind of an isolations around this particular system. And imagine, if we are managing a plant locations of 40 plus, right? So many different kind of modules, different systems being lying over there, creating individual security plan and going and implementing them is a very, very difficult task. Another challenge, what I may ask you is that when we, I'm sure most of the panelists will agree with that, when we go for the security implement system upgradations itself, that cause for a plant outage itself, right? And the kind of a business what we are in, when we have a 24/7 agreement with the customer, you have to go and agree with the customer outages itself, So overall, I would say that the implementation of the security standards, right? And the standards are well defined. It's not rocket science at this point of time what we have to do. But getting that implemented into an OT network is a really a tall task what we have, right? And at least we can't say that we are 100% there, but there is definitely a plan being put in place that probably in next 5 years or 6 years or 7 years of time, we would like to be there and be able to say that, yes, reasonably, I mean, it's never 100% when you talk about the security, right? But reasonably, we have been able to protect the OT networks from the cyber security threats itself. So definitely this is as and when more and more connected systems comes up, the risk of it is definitely increasing day by day. But luckily, that the new systems what are coming in, these are coming in with their inbuilt security standards and these are easy to adopt it. But our worry is that the older systems itself, which are really difficult for us to migrate at this point of time.
Great thoughts, Sujoy. Thank you once again, and I think when you talk about security standard deployment in OT area, I think everyone on this panel will resonate with you. It's not easy. You will still find 2003 running on your environment. Another thing which I have experienced that most of your OT system are running directly on production environment. There is no pre-prod or development or test environment created for them. And most of the time, these systems are generally managed, owned by OEM suppliers, which has their own cycle. Sometimes organized and even don't have proper support and agreement sort of thing, that they can bring the new updates and upgrades. So that is why system upgrade, which you talked about, become very challenging. And on top of that, you need to ensure that your plant is operating 24/7. You are not bringing additional downtime to that. Otherwise, the business will put the business losses in the name of IT. But the good thing which I heard from you last is it will take another 5-6 years, where you will bring OT environment as close to as the IT environment. When I say environment means close to environment means as good from the security perspective as your IT environment is. So great thoughts, and I think other panelists will also resonate with your challenges which you talk about from the security perspective. So with this, we come to our end of those were the few questions which I thought of checking with you. Let me go back to Mohit and Kavya if there are any questions from the viewers or the participants which this panel can take. Kavya, Mohit, I don't see any question on this.
Yes, Anil. As of now, no questions as yet because there were 2 questions were already covered by the panel. Okay. So the questions we received, they've already been covered.
Okay. So before we close, let me ask one question. Have you guys ever thought of putting some solution so that if there is any cybersecurity threat, you can isolate your manufacturing from rest of the world? And if yes, what kind of solution you are thinking of? Anyone, any panelist can answer that.
May I add here?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So here, first of all, in the manufacturing environment, we have to create this kind of automation system, which is more like 24/7 real-time automation system with the IT system. Creates sort of a demilitarized zone. So wherever you have the connectivity between the OT and IT system, create that demilitarized zones so that you can also handle any of the patches, updates, software coming either on the IT side or on the OT side. So that's one thing. The second thing is, of course, intrusion monitoring. I mean, we have to have monitoring of the the assets, the sensors, the communication in the automation system, because as we talked about, automation system is it has to be very robust, available all the time. Even 1 second sometimes, I mean, I talk about in power system, for example, even 20 millisecond of interruption in the system can lead to blackout in a plant or blackout in a utility. So that's why we have to be very, very careful that this system is core, this has to be protected. And if there is any interface with the IT or IoT system or cloud, that has to be again in the demilitarized zone. So create a sort of ring, we call it defense in depth, like, army. So that's I think very important. And of course, monitoring the traffic, the communication traffic, the data, also the user behavior, all those things, they have to be monitored in real time. And then anywhere you find any issue, try to isolate the system, because that may affect your production, and not only affect, but it may lead to some disaster, some safety issue, and whatever. I think that's the key. And the reason why, the last point is why the OEMs and I mean, these software, the automation, the many times robotics also, they are so time tested, running. Many a times they say, don't do anything, don't touch unless you have a hot plug-in kind of system. Yeah, you bring a new controller, new software, hot plug-in, the system is running without any interruption, you just change over. That's fine. But many a times people say that this process plant has been running, don't fiddle around. That's the reason why the same software, the same systems, they're running. But I think over a period of time, we have to monitor, we have to have a learning system by which we will learn the implications of having the new updates, new patches, new antivirus software, and then smoothly transition, hot plugin, as I said, hot swapping, let's say. So that's how we have to manage.
Great, thank you very much, Anil, for answering the question. With this, I think no more questions from the audience. I hand it over back to Pandya for any closure if you want to do. Otherwise, we can consider this as closed.